We've all been captivated by that enduring image, haven't we? The lone figure maybe, or perhaps a small, determined band.
Right, standing against the odds.
Exactly, against this overwhelming, tyrannical state, some classic story stuff. But, in our world today, hyper-connected, surveilled.
Where the state seems all-powerful.
Yeah. Can that underdog, can they really win? Is it even possible for rebels to topple a tyrant anymore? So today we're doing a deep dive. We're getting into the incredibly complex, often, brutal dynamics of how and why rebellions succeed, or maybe more often, why they fall short against dictators.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to unpack some surprising vulnerabilities, things that can pop up even in the most iron-fisted regimes. Think natural disasters or maybe disgruntled insiders.
Yeah, the cracks beneath the surface.
And we'll explore the unexpected, sometimes pretty grim ways rebels actually manage to find their fighters, their funding, and crucially, that place to hide.
Right. So our mission for you, by the end of this deep dive, is to really get a handle on the immense power of the modern nation-state. It's almost unimaginable sometimes.
Yeah.
But crucially, you'll also grasp the specific, often kind of counterintuitive chinks in a tyrant's armor and the precise conditions that allow a rebellion not just to, survive, but to actually challenge that power.
Okay, let's set the stage a bit, because the battlefield, it's changed so dramatically. Think about warfare, say, 5,000 years ago.
Right.
It was largely like guerrillas fighting other guerrillas. Even just a few hundred years back, states were incredibly fragmented.
Oh, absolutely. Like the Holy Roman Empire.
Exactly.
Right.
That famous example, 812, sort of, sovereign entities. Imagine traveling from Brunswick to France, crossing 6 duchies, 4 bishoprics, a free city, just on that short trip. They were often pretty weak, fractured states.
Yeah, not the centralized powerhouses we see now.
Right. Contrast that with today's unified, centralized, technologically advanced nation-states. It really does seem like an almost impossible fight for rebels now, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And what's fascinating is why modern states are so different fundamentally. They are incredibly effective at organizing huge populations for a single aim.
Like war.
Like waging war, precisely. And we're not just talking tanks and jets. Those are obviously part of it.
Okay.
Think about the tech advantages states have now. Mass manufactured surveillance drones, mapping terrain in minutes, satellite imagery readily available, spotting a campfire from orbit practically.
Wow.
Biometric tracking, all sorts of other tools designed specifically to track and, neutralize enemies. You can't just camp out on some remote ridge anymore.
Right, or make a fire in the woods.
Exactly, and expect to stay hidden. The world's just gotten much smaller, digitally speaking. That footprint is almost impossible to erase. And beyond surveillance, there's modern infrastructure, roads, railways, extensive networks. These completely change the game.
How so?
Well, they allow regular troops to get into areas that were previously really inaccessible, remote, dangerous, places rebels used to count on for safety.
All right.
Now, rebels use tech too, of course. Mobile phones for coordination, sure, Google Maps for planning, social media for recruiting.
Yeah, you hear about that.
But they just struggle to match the state at scale, or in terms of integrated intelligence gathering and response.
Okay.
So what this means fundamentally is that the bar is just much, much higher for rebels today. To fight such a powerful enemy, they need to be way more sophisticated, significantly better funded, and much better armed than ever before. It's a huge asymmetry of power, really hard to overcome.
That makes perfect sense. It does sound almost insurmountable. And yet, history gives us these brutal lessons, right? How even formidable tyrants can be undone, sometimes from within. The collapse of Somoza in Nicaragua is just a perfect, tragic illustration of how these vulnerabilities can kind of converge. Let's really unpack this story.
Okay.
So it's 1:30 a.m., December 23rd, 1972. Managua, Nicaragua. People are literally shaken from their sleep.
The earthquake.
Yeah, a 6.25 Richter tremor. Not, off the charts huge, but it absolutely devastated the capital. When the sun came up, the sky hidden by smoke, red dust, fires burning everywhere, thousands of buildings just collapsed.
Total
It
devastation.
was so bad, an official declared a whole section of the city would just be leveled, covered in lime, basically a mass grave.
Oh, God.
One journalist who got there said, those of us who knew Managua will never see it again. Managua has disappeared. All is desolation, death, and tragedy. Just wiped out.
Oh.
Now, General Anastasio Somoza Debayle, Nicaragua's ruler, he looks at all this catastrophe,
Oh, and sees.
opportunity. Shockingly, his first move, declare martial law. right away expands the power of his National Guard.
Okay, consolidating control.
Exactly.
Okay.
Then as international reconstruction aid starts pouring in from all over the world, Somoza makes sure he, not the country, is the main beneficiary. I mean, his family had basically run Nicaragua for decades. Huge business empire already. So Somoza pretty brazenly ensures Managua gets rebuilt, quote, on Somoza land by Somoza construction companies with international aid funneled through Somoza banks.
He turned a national disaster into a personal win
A
fund.
gold mine. Yeah.
And this is exactly where Somoza's actions hit on a core, often fatal mistake for dictators, alienating your insiders.
Right.
Explain that. Well, look, Nicaragua's wealthy elites, they might have previously tolerated the dictator taking the biggest slice of the pie, right? That's often part of the deal.
Sure.
But Somoza was just so incredibly greedy after the earthquake, he left too little for them. These businessmen who had previously been, staunch supporters, relied on the Somoza family. They started to turn against him, and that's a critical shift, losing your base.
So the earthquake created this perfect storm.
Yeah.
Opportunity for Somoza's greed, but it also fueled discontent.
It's nice.
Meanwhile, outside the capital, an insurgency was already sort of brewing. The Sandinista National Liberation Front, the FSLN,
The Sandinistas, yeah.
a leftist rebel group formed back in '61 out of popular frustration. They were already thinking about guerrilla war to bring down the regime, and they used some, unusual tactics.
Like what?
1974. They kidnapped multiple well-known politicians, business figures, during a Christmas party.
Wow, bold.
The regime paid a ransom, freed the hostages, but then Somoza unleashed this brutal wave of violence, his National Guard. A reign of terror, they called it.
What did that involve?
Routinely killing, torturing peasant men, raping women, burning homes, stealing crops, especially outside Managua, really targeting the rural population. So all this left Somoza basically sitting on a powder keg.
Yeah.
Then, January 10th, 1978, the fuse gets lit.
What happened?
3 men shoot Pedro Joaquin Chamorro Cardinal. He was a really popular journalist and opposition leader, shot 18 times.
Assassinated.
Yeah. And his family, much of the public, they immediately blamed the Somoza regime. This just ignited rebellion across the country.
Okay, the tipping point.
In the capital, Somoza businesses burned down. In other cities, young men, women, attacking the National Guard with whatever they could find, pistols, machetes, rocks.
Wow.
In Masaya, the unrest was so bad, infantry couldn't handle it. Somoza had to send in tanks and helicopters. Sounds like he was just completely losing control.
What's truly fascinating here, looking back, is how Somoza found himself facing 3 huge compounding problems by 1979. It created this perfect storm for his downfall.
Okay, what were they?
First, the FSLN factions, which had been kind of fragmented, they managed to bridge their differences, unified into a cohesive fighting force. That's big.
Okay, number 1.
Second, the Carter administration in the U.S., after decades of American support for the Somozas,
Right, they were allies.
Carter completely withdrew backing. A monumental shift. Losing your superpower patron, that's huge.
Absolutely. And third,
Many of Nicaragua's neighbors just became convinced Somoza had to go, and they started actively working towards it.
really? How?
Fidel Castro in Cuba provided rifles, RPGs, artillery to the rebels. Venezuela financed them. Costa Rica became a smuggling route for weapons. Mexico broke off diplomatic relations in May '79.
So he was surrounded by enemies, essentially.
Completely. This convergence, internal dissent, losing his key international protector, and energized regional enemies, it totally isolated Somoza. Led to him eventually fleeing to Miami and later being assassinated in Paraguay.
Wow.
His greed alienated the Managua elites, right? His brutality hit the rural, poor, alienated Catholic bishops, and his stubbornness alienated the very powers that could have potentially saved him. A fatal combination.
That's a powerful lesson, yeah. How a tyrant can just unravel. So, okay, given how formidable modern states are, as we discussed, but also seeing Somoza's end, what exactly do rebels need to stand a chance? Besides, luck and mismanagement by the dictator.
Right.
Let's start with the basics. People. How do these groups actually fill their ranks? Especially when they often start with basically nothing.
It's a complex mix. You get voluntary recruits, sure. People motivated by genuine injustice, sometimes greed.
Or maybe ideology.
Or ideology, yes. But paradoxically, sometimes people join rebel groups seeking safety.
Safety? How does that work?
Well, in failed states, right, where there's very little law, order, stability, sometimes holding a Kalashnikov and joining an organized group, even a rebel one, might actually feel like the most pragmatic way to look after yourself and your family.
Grim pragmatism.
And it gets even grimmer, as you hinted.
Yeah.
If they can't get enough volunteers, people can be forced to fight.
Forced recruitment.
Yeah. To give you a stark example from the Cold War era, estimates suggest maybe 80% of the fighters in Mozambique's Renamo group didn't choose to be there.
80%.
They
Wow.
were forced, and there are some particularly gruesome tactics used to prevent desertion.
Like what?
Kidnapping recruits, then forcing them to commit atrocities near their own homes.
Oh my God, why?
It traps them, makes it impossible for them to ever go back to their communities, burns their bridges, essentially, locks them into the insurgency.
That's horrifying.
And it doesn't stop there. Even children aren't safe. During the Burundian Civil War, there were reports of rebels literally buying street children from Kenya and turning them into fighters.
Buying children?
Yeah. It just shows the incredible lengths these groups sometimes go to just to build number, regardless of individual will.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Okay, so once they have people, however they get them, they critically need money. How do groups like this generate revenue? They're not exactly traditional businesses. They operate in the shadows.
Well, violence itself, shockingly, can be turned into a commodity.
Wow.
This is where it gets really interesting and often incredibly dark. If you're trying to fund an insurgency, natural resources like diamonds are, well, perfect in a grim way.
Why diamonds?
They're often found in remote, poorly governed areas, right? Relatively easy to extract with basic tools, incredibly easy to smuggle, and extremely valuable once they get out of a war zone.
Blood diamonds.
Exactly. That term became famous from Sierra Leone, where rebels taxed poor diggers, forced them to work. The Angolan rebel group UNITA, estimates suggest they made over $1 billion this way.
$1 billion.
Yeah.
From diamonds.
Yeah, and this creates a dangerous kind of snowball effect. Rebels make money, they buy weapons, attract or force more fighters, capture more territory, extract more diamonds.
And then the cycle just feeds itself.
Precisely. Feeds the conflict, makes it harder to stop.
Okay, so natural resources is one way. What else?
Kidnapping is another method, specifically targeting employees of multinational companies.
Why them?
Deep pockets. These companies often operate in remote, sometimes rebel-controlled areas, making their staff vulnerable.
Right.
Take Mannesmann, the German conglomerate, building a pipeline in Colombia, early 80s.
Okay.
One of their engineers, 2 Colombian colleagues, kidnapped by the ELM, the Marxist-Leninist rebel group there. The company reportedly paid millions in ransom. Yeah. And the rebel leader later claimed these payments were part of a series. The relationship apparently got so close, Mannesmann was even issued, protected stickers for their vehicles.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Protection money, basically.
Pretty much. And that German money, it helped the ELN grow by 500% in just a few years. It shows how external corporate vulnerabilities can directly fuel insurgent growth.
Wow. Yeah,
and then there are even more, let's say, unorthodox ways of financing. Political scientist Michael L. Ross calls it booty futures.
Booty futures? What's that?
It's where rebels sell the future exploitation rights to assets they haven't even captured or fully control yet.
Like selling shares into future conquest.
Kinda. Sounds like something out of, the golden age of piracy, maybe?
Yeah.
But it's much more recent. In 1997, Congo's Denis Sassou Nguesso reportedly sold future oil exploitation rights to a French company for $150 million.
Before he was even fully in power.
To fund his private militia and launch the civil war that put him in power. It's a fascinating, if disturbing, way to finance conflict, essentially betting on and selling future control.
Those are incredibly resourceful, brutal methods.
Yeah.
Okay, so people, money. Finally, for rebels to survive, let alone grow, they need a place to hide.
Absolutely crucial.
Geography plays this massive role, right? Try to imagine an insurgency, hypothetically, in the Netherlands.
Flight.
Incredibly flat, small, densely populated, very strong central control. No vast jungles, no really remote areas beyond government reach, at least on the mainland. Hiding would be virtually impossible.
An insurgency there, yeah, practically a non-starter.
Exactly.
Now, contrast that with ideal rebel terrain. Think remote mountainous regions, like Tajikistan. Ismail Somoni Peak there is over 7,400 meters high. That's more than 23 times higher than the, quote, highest mountain in the European Netherlands.
Huge difference.
Tajikistan is full of difficult-to-access mountains.
Yeah.
Perfect hiding places for fighters, for weapons caches. Or think about underdeveloped areas that border other unstable regions, like the eastern part of the Central African Republic.
Okay.
It's hard for the central government to reach, and it borders parts of Congo, South Sudan, Chad, all areas that are themselves hard to access, with porous borders.
So it offers escape routes, supply lines.
Exactly. Perfect hiding places, crucial supply routes, escape options. Makes it incredibly difficult for central governments to actually exert control, and it allows even small groups to carve out little fiefdoms and potentially grow.
That makes sense. It's why so many long-running insurgencies seem rooted in specific geographical pockets.
Precisely. Geography is destiny sometimes in these conflicts.
So beyond the physical stuff, people, money, hiding places, civil wars are ultimately, you could argue, a contest for the populace.
Okay.
Civilians are a critical resource. They provide labor, maybe opportunities for rebel taxation, intelligence.
To either side.
To either side, yeah. So how do rebels win them over, especially when the state usually has so much more raw power?
Well, they often have an inherent advantage, actually, because they tend to be local.
Okay.
And permanent, in a sense. Unlike government troops who are often drawn from all over the country, maybe don't speak the local language and rotate in and out.
The local connection.
Yeah. There's a powerful anecdote from the Algerian Civil War that illustrates this perfectly. An old man arrested by the French army for cutting telegraph poles.
Okay.
He explained why he did it. The French threatened him with prison if he didn't stop. But the rebels, they threatened to cut his throat if he didn't cut the poles.
Jeez.
The old man chose to cut the poles. He said the rebels' threat was simply more credible because, well, they'd actually done it to others in the next village over.
Wow, that's grimly effective.
It highlights that violence, even brutal violence, is often most effective when it's discriminate, when you know precisely who the supposed traitors are and can target them. And rebels often do this better than government troops.
Because of those local ties?
Exactly. Local ties, permanence, speaking the language. They know the social fabric, they know who's who, and they know how to exploit it or protect it, depending on their aims.
That's a chilling point about discriminate violence. Now, here's another really interesting insight, maybe less intuitive. Rebels can actually beat tyrants without winning militarily on the battlefield.
How does that work?
Well, just like rebels, tyrants need people, money, and guns to keep fighting.
Sure. The sinews of war.
But rebels can work to cut off the tyrant's access to those vital resources.
Okay.
They do it partly by tuning the dictator into an international pariah through bloody civil wars, killing civilians, stuff that gets global attention.
Right, the human rights angle.
Exactly. This can lead to sanctions. Now, sanctions might not stop weapons coming in entirely, but they'll ensure they come at a premium. Makes everything more expensive, reduces the effectiveness of an already maybe struggling military.
Okay, strains the budget.
Critically for the autocrat, sanctions can also cut off foreign aid, freeze trade routes. And this leads to what some analysts call a redistribution problem.
Redistribution problem.
Yeah, think about it. Tyrants usually stay in power by dividing up a cake of resources, right? Among their key supporters, military commanders, intelligence chiefs, powerful business figures.
Keeping the elites happy.
Exactly. They absolutely do not want that cake to shrink. Sanctions shrink the cake.
Ah, I see. So it creates internal tension, less to go around.
Precisely. This raises that important question, right? About the long-term sustainability of regimes under that kind of continuous financial and political pressure. It forces really tough choices on the leader.
That makes sense.
And then there's the complicating factor of outsiders in modern civil wars. They can make this even messier.
How so?
Well, imagine a dictator and rebels are supposedly negotiating. A neighboring country or maybe a foreign power might get involved. Suddenly, that two-way negotiation turns into more like an auction for loyalty. Different factions or even the government itself start looking for the highest bidder.
Driving up the price the dictator has to pay to keep people on side.
Exactly. You saw this clearly in the Darfur conflict in Sudan. Peace negotiations actually, perversely, increased competition among factions and inflated the price of loyalty.
Wow. Unintended consequences.
Plus, you often have just rampant internal corruption within the tyrant's own military. Think about soldiers risking their lives on low pay,
Right.
while their commanders are skimming money off ammunition, salaries, even the equipment they need to survive.
Yeah, that must destroy morale.
It's a recipe for breakdown from within.
Absolutely. And external support can cut the other way, too, propping up a dictator. Take the specific example of Chad's Idris Deby.
Okay.
Despite earlier claims by France's foreign minister that, France no longer picked governments,
Right, that was the official line.
Paris repeatedly intervened to protect Deby's regime. As late as 2019, French pilots and French jets were bombing rebels on Deby's behalf.
Bombing rebels in Chad. Why?
Explicitly, according to reports, to protect his regime from a coup d'etat.
Wow. So much for not picking governments.
Exactly. It clearly shows how crucial and sometimes, hypocritical external support can be for a tyrant's survival, even when they might be seen as a pariah elsewhere. It can completely reshape the battlefield dynamic.
Okay, so what does this all mean then for our initial question? We've seen all these factors: internal dissent, external pressures, resourceful rebels. But despite all that, winning a civil war is still incredibly difficult, isn't it?
Incredibly difficult.
The Syrian civil war is just such a stark contemporary example. Millions displaced, hundreds of thousands killed. Yet the tyrant, Bashar al-Assad, is still firmly in power.
It directly challenges that often quoted Henry Kissinger line, the guerrilla wins if he does not lose.
Right, the idea that survival equals victory for the rebel.
Because in reality, there are plenty of insurgencies that have waged guerrilla war for decades without ever coming close to actually winning. Look at the FARC in Colombia.
Decades of fighting.
Decades. Hundreds of thousands of lives lost. Eventually, they signed a controversial ceasefire, which was an achievement for FARC, in a way, sure. But was it victory?
No, not really.
No, it wasn't. Rebels actually need to win, either on the battlefield or beat the regime some other way, like cutting off its resources, as we discussed. Simply surviving often isn't enough to topple a tyrant, especially a resilient one.
And what makes a tyrant especially resilient to that outside pressure, for example?
Well, a few things really help. Having an indigenous arms industry is a big one.
So they can make their own weapons.
Right. Keep pumping out weapons, even if foreign suppliers cut them off due to sanctions. Another is being able to sell valuable commodities, oil, minerals, whatever, at high prices, despite committing human rights abuses.
If someone's willing to buy.
If someone's willing to buy, exactly. And finally, if their economy can basically survive without foreign aid. If a regime ticks all those boxes, it's extremely difficult to beat, as one source puts it, because you just can't starve them of the resources they need.
Right, they're insulated.
And on the battlefield itself, there's an evolution. Rebels often have an early advantage, especially in the right terrain, using simple means.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Nuristan tribesmen in Afghanistan.
Yeah, slingshots and axes against armored vehicles.
Exactly. In mountain roads too narrow for turrets to even turn. Clever tactics and specific geography.
But that doesn't win the war.
No. Eventually, to actually take and hold territory, to challenge the state seriously, rebels usually need to fight more like a conventional army. They have to concentrate their forces.
Which makes them
a bigger target, much more vulnerable to the state's superior firepower, air power, artillery, tanks. It's a critical strategic pivot, moving from guerrilla to conventional tactics, and it often fails. And at the end of the day, even corrupt, demoralized government forces, simply because they have that heavy weaponry and air support, are often enough to hold off an opposition indefinitely, prevent anything resembling a clear rebel victory.
So we've explored this incredibly nuanced landscape today, haven't we? The almost insurmountable power of modern states versus the complex, often desperate resilience of rebel movements.
Yeah, it's rarely straightforward.
We've seen how that crucial interplay works. A dictator's internal missteps, the strategic importance of people, money, and geography for the rebels, and then the unpredictable impact of external pressures. All of that dictates success or failure.
It's a messy equation.
It really is.
And this raises an important question, maybe something for you, the listener, to consider. Even if these cruel leaders manage to hold internal rebellions at bay, their actions, the instability they create, the enemies they make, could that make them vulnerable to a different, potentially even more powerful threat? Meaning other states. What does this imply about the long-term survival prospects of such regimes in our increasingly interconnected, often rivalrous world? Does surviving internally just paint a bigger target on their back internationally?
That's a really provocative thought. As we wrap up, maybe just take a moment to consider the immense human cost in all these conflicts. So
Absolutely.
look at the families displaced, the lives shattered, often not by grand, clear-cut strategic plans, but by these intricate, often brutal factors we've discussed today. These factors that allow some tyrants to cling to power while others, maybe surprisingly, fall.
Yeah.
We really invite you to continue your own deep dive into these critical global dynamics, because understanding these forces